Dzień dobry I witam. If you want a low-carb dish that will fit your diet and still satisfy those in the house who want some carbage, this is the combo that you will really appreciate. Since I never really grew up, I say I aged with this dish. It holds a very special place in my often broken heart. It's really simple and will have your family asking for it again and again. So let's get started. We are first going to dice up some onions and sweat them in butter. I like to use an onion dicer, so I cut the ends of the onion and split it into sections and chop away with this handy tool. There is a secret to cleaning the grate on this tool when you are done with it, otherwise it's a big pain. When chunks of onion are stuck in the grate, use a scrub brush and instead of scrubbing sideways, turn the grate upside down and just poke your brush with the bristles at the onions on the other side. Basically, scrubbing sideways gets them stuck more, but pressing the bristles into it cleans it right away. I make large portions, so the recipe here is for serving 6, but you will see in the video larger quantities because I don't live in a studio and I have a family of hungry teens to feed. I'm using 2 massive onions, probably grown in a field situated near the runoff area from a nuclear reactor. We played softball with these last year. Put a quarter stick of butter into a side pan and begin transferring your diced onions into it. Keep the heat medium. As you finish the rest of the onion dicing, check on it once in a while to make sure we are not burning them. I put a pot of water for the egg noodles on the side for the carby folks in the house, but I will be eating the dish without the noodles. I really don't like the name of this dish, and I'd love to change it. So this is what I imagine. The French were sitting around one day making coq au vin, literally chicken with wine, or chicken in wine. And a tourist asked what it was, and they said coq au vin in their beautiful language. Meanwhile, in Poland, someone was making this delicious dish, this chicken with mushrooms, and a tourist asked what it is that you're making, and the cook responded, kurczak z grzybami. Literally chicken with mushrooms. Kurczak z grzybami. So when the tourists both got back home and they were thrilled to share what they had, one said they had coq au vin in France and some chicken and mushroom in Poland. You see the issue? The dish needs a better name for what it is because it's honestly impossible to say the original Polish name. If I could rename it to something like Silesian chicken, or at least something to identify its country or region of origin, but no, kurczak z grzybami is what we get. And again, English and French win the title for the most marketable languages in the world. Now, fill a bowl with some flour and begin cubing the chicken thighs. The dish can be made with full chicken thighs though, cutlets, so you don't need to cube them if you're short on time, but I like the bite-sized pieces better, but use thighs or pieces, both will do the job. If you don't want too much fat on the thighs, cut them off. I usually do. So I cut the chunks off, and remember to switch to a lower resolution camera when filming this part of your YouTube video because cutting chicken in 4K is nasty. I did not enjoy editing this part. I may never eat this dish again. Start another pan with some oil or shortening in it just to cover the bottom of the pan and get it to temperature. Shortening will burn if your heat is too high and ruin your dish, so only use shortening if you plan on actively monitoring your heat. You'll be adding flour-coated chicken pieces into the pan and frying them. When you drop them in, salt each batch. Remember to add only a few pieces at a time so the temperature doesn't drop too low, and most importantly, get the remaining flour off the chicken. So you can use a sifter at this point, but I don't because I don't want another thing to wash. I just use my hands to bounce the flour off before I place the pieces in. This is why you can use an entire chicken thighs instead of pieces to save time and the mess of getting the flour off of each piece. But definitely easier with a whole thigh, but if you don't get the flour off the chicken, you will end up with this hard coating of flour crust burned in on the bottom of the pan, which will affect the taste. So you should also move the pieces around a bit to keep them from sticking. In my most used top drawer in the kitchen near my range, I keep my cooking spoons and tongs. I think tongs should be always handy in the kitchen, and they are extremely versatile. Moving food around, stirring, and grabbing is what you really want readily at hand. So I use these tongs to grab the pieces out of the pan that seem ready when they're golden brown and fried, and then add the new pieces to the other side of the pan. Keep your eye on the onions. There will be no onion smell here as they caramelize and release sugars, meaning they add a wonderful aroma to your dish and really disappear later on. You will not taste onion in the final product, even though I'm using quite a lot of it here. When your last batch of chicken thighs is done, go ahead and put the rest of the chicken that you had on the side on top, and then put as much onion as you want on top of that. You will need 1 cup of water, but I really prefer using chicken stock. I really like better than bouillon, which I make with hot water before putting it into the pan. So since I'm adding hot water, I need to immediately reduce my heat to a simmer, but if you are using cold water or lukewarm water, you'll still need to wait for the liquid to start bubbling before you can reduce to a simmer. Then cover and let cook for 1 hour. You can use this time to practice saying kurczak z grzybami. Before the hour is up, you'll need to cut up some parsley, dill, which is optional but it does make it authentic, and sliced mushrooms. You only add this all at the end of the 1 hour, especially the mushrooms, because nothing is more disappointing with mushrooms than them losing their texture in cooking. Remember that mushrooms first eject moisture and then soak it in, and this is achieved here when adding the mushrooms at the very end. I'm adding a ton of mushrooms here, knowing that they will reduce to half of what is going to be eventually, and I usually overdo it, but the amount depends on you, and you can add more or less than the recipe calls for. This last part literally takes 10 minutes. Increase your heat a bit to get the water vapor up, and if your sauce is a little thick at this point, you can add a 1/4 cup of water or chicken stock to help with the mushrooms, but don't add too much water, only enough to see the vapor inside steaming this dish. In a side bowl, you will prepare sour cream. You'll need to do this in a side bowl because adding your sour cream directly to such a hot dish will shock and separate it into small little white floaty curds, and you don't want this. So I will add some of the sauce from the main dish into this bowl and begin mixing the sour cream into it. I also add 1/2 cup or more of heavy whipping cream. To me, I think the flavor is better, the texture is better by adding whipping cream, but you don't need to if you don't want. Mix regularly to exchange the heat in the dish for about 10 minutes, and your Silesian chicken, your chicken with mushrooms, whatever you want to call it, is almost ready to serve until you add that sour cream and heavy whipping cream at the very end. So I hope you try this dish. I hope you make a lot to feed your family for a couple days and really enjoy the flavors of home cooking. Dziękuję bardzo I do zobaczenia.